Okay, first of all, he calls himself a serial technology startup guy, and I like that already. Working for the world's largest beverage company, and in this role he says it's not intuitive at first glance. But if you look at his bio, it actually, it does make a lot of sense. He really is a startup guy. He's worked in Silicon Valley. He has startup DNA as his middle name. And he's working in a newly created group at Anheuser-Busch, which we'll hear about. I think what he's doing is building an e-commerce business in China for Anheuser-Busch, and he's treating the business as a high-growth startup. So I like all these things. He started his career in Beijing in 1989, and now he's come full circle. This is his second tour of China. And between China stints, he had front row seats at several technology inflection points, spending the mid-1990s in Silicon Valley, involved in early internet, SaaS, and cloud. Everybody remembers all those technologies, right? And working in the late 1990s in Redmond, Washington, deeply embedded in Microsoft. So I think his bio is really interesting. And I wanted to introduce Martin Suter and ask him to come to the stage and tell us more about what he's doing now. So Martin, take it away.
Thank you, Rebecca. That was a little embarrassing, actually. So just saying how much China's changed in the last 10 years. My first trip to China was 1988. I lived in Beijing in 89. So you can imagine the change over the 30-year period of my career. So I'm a serial startup guy. This is not an intuitive role, but what I really want to talk to you about today and hopefully inspire and maybe provoke some thoughts about what digital transformation means for a fairly traditional large company like AB InBev. Jack Welch was quoted some years ago as saying, when the rate of change outside of a business exceeds the rate of change inside a business, the end is near. And I think this is something that we've taken really close to heart. Right? Nowhere in the world changes as quickly or as profoundly as China. And if we are not adapting as a company to that scale of change, then we run the risk of becoming irrelevant. And again, this was the provocation internally that our board gave our CEO 4 years ago when we created this group within which I sit. I was offered a chance 3 years ago to come to China to basically build an internet company. And it took me about 10 seconds to say yes, of course, right? A little bit about AB InBev, by way info for the Chinese in the room. A lot of people don't realize that we're the 5th largest FMCG company in the world. We're 30% larger than Coca-Cola, which surprises a lot of people. So the largest beverage company in the world. Number 1 in EBITDA, so the most profitable FMCG company in the world. We have 7 of the top 10 most valuable beer brands in the world. Some of these you'll recognize, of course, in China, Budweiser. We're particularly proud that Harbin is ranked the number 5 most valuable beer brand in the world, a domestic Chinese beer brand. But 7 of the world's top 10 beer brands in the world. We've been in China through Harbin Brewery since 1900, so the oldest brewery in China. Today we have about 17,000 employees. We've got about 28 breweries throughout China. So we're obviously fully committed to the market. And interestingly enough, this is also the largest Budweiser market in the world. We sell more Budweiser in China than we do in the United States. And that surprises a lot of people. We sell more Corona here than anywhere else in the world. I mean, when you start to understand the scale of the business here, it's actually quite exciting. But I think equally importantly is our commitment to sustainability. So we have the largest solar array in China in our Fujian brewery, so we're generating solar electricity. We're committed by 2025 to be 100% sustainable globally. Right, so already in the United States, if you buy a can of Budweiser, it's 100% brewed with solar power. This is a global commitment. So clean water, smart agriculture, renewable energy, and circular packaging. These are big company commitments. So Interbrand ranks brands by value. So just to put this in context, Budweiser is the 33rd most valuable brand in the world, worth over almost $16 billion. To put this in context, I added a couple of other brands that you may be familiar with. Budweiser is 40% more valuable as a brand than Starbucks. And again, I think this surprises a lot of people. This is one of the brands in our portfolio. and it's about 4 times or 3 times more valuable than Heineken as brands go. So it's a really important brand for us, and I'm going to talk about how we have activated digitally in China to enhance the value of the brand. So the topic was really, how can we become indispensable to consumers? And when I test drove this with my staff in Shanghai, they weren't sure what indispensable meant. So I thought I'd provide the definition, right? Indispensable means to be absolutely necessary, right? And I think that the synonyms are also quite interesting. Essential, crucial, vital. I think these are very powerful aspirations for us. So as a company and as a brand, our goal is to become indispensable to consumers. So the question that we ask and answer ourselves, or try to answer internally, is how can we become indispensable in China? What does that mean to be indispensable? I think I'm going to share some data here. This is from a beer shopper study that we ran last year. And what's interesting is how important it is to be where consumers are shopping in China, and how the market is evolving very quickly. So for the beer category, what we see is that 38% of beer shoppers are switching channels, right? They're moving from large format hypermarkets, supermarkets, online. So the reason we did this beer study was to answer the question internally, does my business just cannibalize the rest of the business, or is it incremental? I think this is a really important thing, because I need to justify my existence and our growth. But what we see is that 62% is incremental and 38% is just people switching from other channels. Then Nielsen came out with some data that I'm going to share here as well. This was a couple of weeks ago that I got really excited about. This is the breakdown of the beer category by channel. So you've got large format retail at the bottom, supermarket, minis, convenience store, and so on. But what you see are growth rates in the legend there. So year-over-year growth for the beer category online was 47% last year. My business grew 78% year-over-year, so growing faster than the category, which is obviously a good thing. But interesting to see hypermarkets, large format retail is effectively flat. Other formats are growing, but 2018 was an inflection point for us because it was the first time, if you're looking at the numbers here, it was the first time that online sales of beer as a category exceeded hypermarket, exceeded supermarket, bigger than convenience stores, and not just by a little margin, right? 44% larger all of a sudden. In 1 year, online beer became 44% larger than hypermarket, right? 33% larger than convenience stores. These are very traditional markets for us. So as a business, as a company, this has a profound impact on our direction and on our strategy. So as the owner of this business, super proud. I think this bodes well for where we're going. And of course, when we think about what else is happening, digital is the battlefield, right? It's the battlefield for all channels. You have to win the shelf, not just in the store now, but online, because it's not just the traditional e-commerce players now that are digitizing. It's every format of retail. Right? People are shopping, they're entering Walmart through a WeChat mini program, they're coming into Carrefour via JD Daojia, right? It doesn't matter, lots of different entry points that are digital, but if you lose digital, if you lose the digital battlefield, no, it's not just about losing e-commerce now, you lose all retail, right? So this again, for a company like ours, this has profound implications, the need to win. And it's not just off-trade, the in-home consumption. What we're also seeing is, of course, you need to win on the on-trade because it's digitizing as well. So if the in-home meal occasion is something that you're focused on, you have to be aware of what Ulama is doing, of course, because the Chinese consumption behavior for in-home food is rapidly evolving as well. And that's, of course, a digital entry point. So winning the digital battlefield is absolutely key. If we talk about shopper missions, why do people go and shop? Right? And if I think it's useful to think about, from an e-commerce perspective, when I arrived a couple of years ago, 1 to 2 day delivery was sort of, par for the course, right? Now, if you think about, time on the x-axis here, and what are the implications when delivery is 1 hour, right? The y-axis here is really purchase frequency, right, or occasion frequency. So, If we think about, traditional missions for us would be, browse and explore, deal-driven, stock up. These are, kind of why people go and shop. In a new retail world, right, where you have 1 hour delivery, you can start to think about convenience, impulse kinds of occasion or shopper missions, right? Today's needs, for me, for now, social beer run. This is how we describe why consumers go and make a decision to buy, our products. Similarly, if you think about consumption occasions, right, the traditional e-commerce occasions, the high intensity, low frequency occasions like 11, 9, 618, where we sell, massive volumes of beer over a very short period of time. But what new retail allows us to do and forces us to think about now are higher frequency occasions. So I mentioned the in-home food, that in-home meal occasion, very important for a beverage company. How can you connect with consumers and drive in-home consumption, leveraging the meal occasions? This is where a partnership or doing some cool things with a company like Ulama really starts to I think have an impact on our total business. And then similarly, if you think about, or as we think about products, what SKUs do we sell in? We have promotion, large volume SKUs for the deal-driven days. 11 specific SKUs for the big events. But now we have smaller pack sizes. We're trying to connect more closely with the occasions. So you'll see, Homa is another great example where, where we can connect with high-end food and provide more and different options for consumers when it comes to beer food pairings and different things. So again, it forces us or it challenges us to think about what and how we sell very, very differently. The same beer shopper study had another insight that frankly was unexpected. So we talked about how we have channel switching on the left. The far right suggested that 28% of beer shoppers in China reported making their first beer purchase online. I made my first beer purchase in a bar in Montreal at the age of 15, so quite different. But this was an unexpected insight. So we asked why is this the case? And I think we as a company, as a big brand company, we've shifted a lot of our digital media, a lot of our media investments to digital, and we do a lot of amazing digital activations. And as far as I can tell, those activations, those digital investments are landing with consumers and bringing them into the category. And because they're Chinese millennials, where and how do they shop? It's always online, right? So that connection between great digital activations is converting and is helping to build the category online. So again, this was super interesting insight for us. I got a short video here I'm going to play that really shows one of the things that we did in CNY this year, Chinese New Year, with Budweiser. Hopefully it connects with you guys as well as it did with the market. So let's just, we'll run the video here quickly and I'll come back. Imagine, if you will, a video. Didn't like that. Okay. So a little bit of a technical issue there. That's okay. So what we did during CNY this year, of course, Chinese New Year is an occasion where everybody travels home to visit friends and family. The big idea with the marketing campaign was, a colony of ants going home, taking trains, going through airports with a bottle of Budweiser. It actually looks better than it sounds. I get that. But what we wanted to do is to connect that migration and that occasion in a way that really landed and resonated with consumers. So we've been building a primary consumer data capability for, let's see if it plays, for, okay, go. All right, here we go. glad to see the video. So really what we did there was we took, we were building a primary consumer data capability. We've got millions of consumer records. We then thought, can we connect with these people in a relevant way at a time and place that matters, with a message that matters? So when using location-based services, when people were in railway stations traveling home, we pushed a message to them via Tmall. They were able to then claim a Hongbao through a gamified user experience, and we drove over 13 million GMV in that period of time. So again, for me, this is a super interesting application of technology, data, and connected really with the consumer in a meaningful way. So just my last slide. Again, I think for us, we want to be indispensable to consumers. We want to be absolutely essential. And our goal is to do it in these 5 ways, right? Anticipating shifts in consumer shopping behaviors. This is something that is absolutely happening in real time. The world is changing dramatically. Shopper missions, again, super important. In-home occasions for us, helping to create and define, understanding how social behaviors are changing, and connecting with those in a meaningful way. Portfolio, and again, continuing, I think, to aspire to connect in a meaningful way with Chinese consumers through digital interaction. So that's it. I think Rebecca had said there may be a few minutes for questions. I'm happy to take any questions, or we can talk after as well.
Hello. Anyone have a question? Okay. And let's get a mic to you, and if you could identify yourself, please. Turn the microphone right above on the side.
I have a loud voice.
Okay, and who are you?
Michael Marion Business Consultant. My question is, with ABM's multi-brand strategy, like when I look on JD, I see the brands kind of have their own stores, their own flagship. ABM has it as well. But how is, for the smaller brands, beyond the Budweiser, Hardin, Corona, what have you seen for sort of driving awareness in the market, particularly in digital where it's so crowded and so hard to grab the consumer's attention?
Yeah, so really good question. I think, traffic is expensive in China, right? And the e-commerce battle is won or lost based on traffic. So, it is really hard sometimes for a smaller brand. The signal to noise ratio is quite hard, right? So, if your signal is quite weak, and there's so much noise in the channel, it's hard to be heard. So, in a big occasion like Double 11, for example, we will focus on our big brands because we know there's going to be so much noise on the channel, right? So Budweiser, Harbin, those are big brands, and we dominated Double 11 last year with our biggest brands. But a lesser brand like Hoegaarden, for example, more of a boutique brand, a Belgian beer brand, Goose Island, Foxy Cat, some of our craft beers. It's really hard on the big occasions to separate, to have a signal powerful enough to be heard. So we would focus on different occasions, right? Or trying to create different occasions where perhaps there's less noise on the channel. I think that would be my biggest advice is don't try to play on the noisiest occasions because you'll get drowned in. But create your own occasions and try to have a signal that can be heard then.
Is there another question from the audience? Okay, so all right, right here, and actually, could you pass the mic, please? Thank you. Yes, they
from Mongolia, and one of the two reasons why So, Michael, who's your top competitor that you're comparing against in the Chinese market? Because I'm not really knowledgeable about the market here. And also, second question is, often the innovation comes from other industries. So, who are some leaders you're watching to learn and to implement at AB?
So thanks for the question. I think, in China, the beer market is dominated primarily by three countries, right? With Snow, Qingdao, and ABI, not necessarily in that order. And I think that's seen online. What's also visible online is more of a long tail. And again, I think that's because unlike other traditional routes, unlike other traditional channels that have require wholesalers and distributors to get to market, the internet is highly capital efficient, right? And the barriers to entry are lower. So you do see a long tail of beers coming in from countries like Germany, for example, that you wouldn't necessarily see in other channels. And that's something that we need to be aware of and kind of react to. The way in which we win is we've got the world's greatest brands. We can create a lot of enthusiasm for the brands and create a signal that's heard above the noise. But the internet channel is certainly very different. And then the second question was.
Who are you tracking? I mean, the first question is like market share. Are you leading? As a foreign brand, are you still?
So we're killing it. So we're dominating. We are way over indexed. I think we're about 12 percentage points over indexed online versus offline in China. Right? So we are dominating and winning that digital battlefield that I talked about. When you asked about what categories, what industries are inspirational for us. I think we were lucky in that beer was a late entrant to e-commerce. A lot of FMCG companies, of course, 3C started apparel, other FMCG categories kind of led the way. Cosmetics is doing some amazing things as well, of course. So we were able to learn from them, and what we've tried to do is leapfrog, right? So that CNY activation was the first of its kind in China, using location-based services and all of that to connect in real time. I think we're going to submit that for a Cannes Global Line this year. We're so proud of that. And I think that's really that cool. But we've been lucky because we were a little bit late, and it gives us the opportunity to learn and then try to build on top of and leapfrog.
Was there anything that surprised you in particular in introducing? I mean, it seems to me that it's weird that online sales for beer. It seems very strange to me.
So 44% larger than hypermarket. Did I tell you that?
Yeah, I think I saw that slide.
So it's not intuitive, but again, if you think, this is China, right? And if you think about shopper behavior, right? People are no longer shopping in large format retailers. They would prefer to shop digitally. And all of the channels are digitizing. So, and it's an opportunity also for the large format retailers, or for any format of retailer, because now their physical location is an advantage. Because it gives them, if you draw a 3-kilometer circle around a physical store, that's your target market digitally. Right? So Hema, I was in Shenzhen, or Hema in Shenzhen, they have 500,000 consumers within a 3-kilometer radius of a single store in Shenzhen that they are servicing. 70% of their transactions are digital transactions.
Did they deliver it cold?
Cold beer and warm food. What could be better?
Okay, good. All right, let's give Martin a round of applause. That was